Good evening, and welcome to Wonderful Counselor Podcast. You are about to enter a continuing story called Hide and Seek. This episode is number 10, titled Ritual 2. I can't promise you your mind will survive the disturbing graphic and horrific word pictures that will play in your imagination, shattering your illusion of safety, like a butcher knife repeatedly tearing away your human flesh, leaving nothing but a memory of terror as your bones remember. Children, most adults, and anyone who's experienced trauma, especially abuse, kidnapping, or witnessed women being tortured, should not listen or risk being like the characters in this episode who don't make it out alive. Don't say I didn't warn you. After all, it's just a story. In the latest episode, women were, as the killer puts it, placed in environments by their choice. They literally hang between life and death. Let's join them. The women hung there knowing their next move of their bodies would bring the razor wire like a monster with sharp claws, cutting deeper into their flesh. Amanda and Misty prayed. Valerie had said she didn't believe in God, but found herself with Megan praying as well. How long the women hung there seemed like forever to them. Their muscles pushing back with their butts was unsustainable, and the razor wire was so close, as if it was a face, it would touch their lips with a kiss of death. One by one, their exhausted bodies fell toward the wire, severing lungs and throats, and dug into their beautiful faces. Just when they thought their prayers hadn't been answered, Agent Fillmore and the other FBI agents, police officers, and medical team descended into the cabin. He had been tracking Candy by her beacon in the helicopter. He was the first to enter and then gave the all-clear signal. As they walked into the living room, all stopped. They could not believe the horror that they were witnessing. There were 7 women bodies hanging on the wall, all wearing collars. Their bodies wrapped around in razor wire, except the one who resembled a dead fish, hanging by her gills with her head bashed in. Blood was everywhere. It looked like a slaughterhouse. None of the women were moving, and the medics ran past Sasha, who was clearly dead. But they could not get to the bodies. Agent Fillmore and other agents and police officers looked around the compound if they could find anything to cut the wires. The agents found many pairs of sharp cutting shears, gloves, and metal poles. The team worked slowly to get through the wire to determine if the next woman was alive. The medic noticed that the woman's body fell forward, and the wire wrapped around her neck, digging into her veins. He was able to get to her and checked her pulse. He called out, "This one's gone." The next woman also had no pulse. The wire had cut through her lungs. Apparently, she suffocated to death. The next medic cleared the wire and called out, "I got a pulse!" And like an echo of hope, the other medics answered, "These are alive too!" It was painstaking, cutting and unraveling the razor wire and using metal poles to gently as possibly pull it off their flesh. But finally the death cocoons were removed and fell to the floor. Agent Fillmore released them from their collars. This time he knew how to do it without breaking their necks. Lines of blood were inserted into the women's arms. The team worked furiously. They had to try to keep them alive. The four women had holes and gouges and deep cuts to the bone. They had to sterilize those to keep the bacteria from spreading. Many of them had to have up to 50 stitches in multiple body parts, mostly legs and arms, that they sacrificed to protect vital organs. The women remained unconscious, but they were breathing and were loaded into the helicopter and medevac to the local hospital. The other women had been bagged and tagged, loaded into the other helicopter. Agent Fillmore instructed a team of 5 FBI agents with 2 German shepherds to search the compound for other bodies alive or dead. One of the agents went into the garage and found a truck, a duplicate of the one Joan, the serial killer, was now driving away from the compound. He opened the door and realized too late as he saw the lights blink on the dashboard. The explosion burst him into flames. It set off a chain reaction of other explosive devices that left the entire compound disintegrated. Shock waves of the blast shook the helicopter that had barely cleared the explosion zone. Fires raged in the forest and black smoke billowed from the structures. Agent Fillmore looked down at what looked like a war zone. He knew there would be no survivors, as not a structure was standing, and up to 500 yards around the compound was scorched earth. Agent Fillmore called the emergency fire department on Jaber and surrounding areas, and planes and fire crews were dispatched to contain the blaze. One helicopter arrived like an angel of mercy, and the emergency room teams met them and rushed the women into the surgery rooms. The other helicopter arrived like an angel of death as the 3 women were taken in for autopsies to be carved up in the name of forensic science. It was done not only to determine the cause of death, but to see if the dead would talk, by the killer leaving fingerprints or some other form of DNA on their bodies. It turns out the dead had nothing to say for clues. Only their eyes were like hollow orbs, left a testimony of the horror that they'd been through, and the relief of finally ending the torture, being dead. The 4 women all made it through surgery, however still in critical condition except one. Candy was alone in her room. The nurse had just left to check on the other patient. Candy awakens, the sedation had worn off. Her blood was miraculously replenishing, so she took out her IV. She put her feet down on the floor, and with each step became stronger. The scars of the razor wire remained, but they were fading like they happened years ago, not in the last 24 hours. Her mind was razor sharp as the wire that had cut into her flesh earlier. She instinctively knew where the other women were located, and one by one she waited for the nurses to move on. And she touched her friend's eyes, and they opened. She said, "In Jesus' name, be healed." And the other 3 women on death's door were now like Candy, alive, no need for IVs, and all stayed in the same room, with the last to be healed, which was Megan. Agent Fillmore went into Candy's room. She was gone. The nurse thought she must have somehow gone to the bathroom, despite the IV being unhooked. So she still looked in, but no Candy. She signaled a nursing alert, and panic built as 4 women had just disappeared. Agent Fillmore went into Megan's room and found them, just sitting like they'd been raised from the dead and now were chatting by their gravesides. Agent Fillmore looked at Candy. "You told me about the miracle and how you lived through being held captive by Joe, the serial killer." But he was still doubtful that actually had happened. Now, with all of them healed and seemed more alert than he was, he believed the evidence was right in front of him, and it was indefutable. It was a miracle from God. asked Agent Fillmore was her friend and fellow police officer Valerie Hendershot and psychologist Lindsay Stephanie Scottsdale in the other hospital. That question hung in the air. Although Agent Fillmore felt compassion for the women, his response was as cold as the table the three women bodies were laying on in the morgue. "They didn't make it," said Agent Fillmore. "They're dead." All the women's eyes filled with tears, Megan's especially, since Valerie and her were childhood friends. They went to the academy together, and she was her roommate in college. Megan asked how they died. Agent Fillmore flipped through some of the pages. Cause of death of Officer Hendershot, suffocation. Razor wire cut through her chest, punctured both lungs. She breathed herself to death. Dr. Stephanie Scottsdale, Lindsay, died with razor wire wrapped around her neck. Her head was held on by the wire and fell off when the wires were removed. The doctors, in a few hours, checked the women out. They were all cleared to leave the hospital, and the miraculous was documented in their medical records. Joan pulled up to another property that was off the grid. She went into the cabin and poured herself a glass of wine. She turned on the news and watched the reports of the fire, and knew somehow Amanda, her daughter, survived, and maybe not all the other women, but some of them. She felt a little sad. Oh, not for the women, certainly not for her daughter. But she would miss the old compound she loved. That cabin had lots of memories. The time she had sex with her husband on her honeymoon, while the women were in the other room bleeding out. Those were the good old days, she reminisced. She missed Joe and his touch, and yes, she had to admit, she missed watching the master craftsman, her husband, torture all those young women. They used to sit together holding hands as the blood dripped out of their bodies, as they watched them take their last breath, and their lights go out of their eyes. Joan sighed and pulled out her laptop and connected to the satellite. She searched the Colorado Springs area for any open access point for her internet closest to where her daughter Jeannie lived. She was Amanda's twin. She was hoping it would be easy, and it was. Her daughter had many devices connected to her router, and soon she had the layout of the entire home. She accessed her security system cameras and noticed in the hallway two little girls trying to get into a locked room where their mom's computer was. There she is, thought Joan. She then hacked into Jeannie's computer and looked at her through the computer camera. Jeannie was wearing a nightgown, had a glass of wine in her hand, and what looked like a 9mm in the other. She was just staring at the computer screen. Joan could see her bank account was open, and that she was way overdrawn. Leverage, thought Joan. She called her daughter, no response. So Joan turned on her daughter's cell phone remotely and gave the phone a very large, jarring ring and called her. Jeannie was startled and picked up the phone. Joan began, "Jeannie, dear, this is your Aunt Joan." "I don't have time to talk to you now," said Jeannie. Joan simply said, "Look at the computer again," and she did. And her account was not overdrawn. She, in fact, had $10,000 to spare. Her attention, Joan continued, "I paid your bills, dear. I gave you a cushion financially." "How did you?" And Joan interrupted, "We don't have time for that, dear. But you really need to get help for your gambling and drinking. You're a single young woman with two daughters." "I don't have a gambling or drinking problem," said Jean defiantly. "Do you want to bet?" asked Joan. "No, really, I have a bet for you, and if you win, I will double what you have in your account, and I will pay your bills, to include any gambling debts you have acquired." In a questioning voice, "What if I lose?" Joan ignored the question initially. "There is a package I mailed you, dear. Did you receive it?" "Yes," said Jeannie. "I was going to hawk it." "Well, do not do that, dear. Put it on." Jeannie put on the gold necklace. "Now, here's the bet. Go to your closet and pick out any clothing, and stand in front of the mirror, and I'll tell you exactly what you're wearing. And if I am right, you must never take off the necklace, even if you find someone to get in the sheets with. You are to drop your kids off at your neighbor, who's your best friend, and drive to the address I give you, and you're to stay there until I call. I'll take care of your bills. I'll even pay off that man who's on his way to collect the money. Do we have a deal, dear? Asked Joan. Jeannie thought for a moment. Sure, it's a bet, and turned off her computer. She then took a drink and let her nightgown fall to the floor and stood in front of the mirror. Joan complimented her on her body and how grown up she looked in her birthday suit. Jeannie quickly put her on her nightgown. She felt as if she'd been violated and sat down in the chair stunned. How did you know? I can't leave my kids, said Jeannie. Joan told her to turn on her computer and access her bank account. And she did, and there was no money in it. Jeannie surrendered. Okay. Pack lightly, dear. And then Jeannie opened the door and embraced her two little girls and told them that they were going to have a sleepover with their friend. Jeannie brought them over to Sylvia's house and made up a story why she needed to leave, but would be back. Jeannie returned to her house and went into the garage. She loaded up her car, and she saw Mr. Sullivan's hired help, Greg, overhead. He was there to collect her debt. Jeannie shared, I sent you the money. My debt is paid. Greg didn't believe her and said, in a nothing personal, it's business type of voice, I'm either going to beat you into the concrete or rape you. You choose. Jeannie said, I know I've lied before, and you don't trust me, but please don't hurt me. I'll make a bet. If the money is not there when you look at your phone, you won't have to rape me. I've been drinking. I will give you consensual sex. You'll do whatever I asked without force? Asked Greg. Yes. He smiled. Well, I have a few hours to wear you out. He said, I'll look at the phone if you drop your dress to the floor. Jeannie was quite embarrassed, but did as commanded. Greg then called his phone. He closed it up. Too bad, we would have had fun. As he was leaving, he said, if you gamble with us again and don't pay your debt, you will get to experience both consequences I gave you. Jeannie pulled up her dress, got into her car shaking, and drove north to the Denver area. She arrived at a wilderness recovery camp for alcohol and gambling disorders. The secretary was expecting her, and Jeannie thought about leaving, but realized the consequences and remembers what Greg said. If that money disappeared again. So she did what she did not want to do. She agreed and checked herself into treatment. Joan was exhausted. She closed her laptop and got ready for bed and fell asleep. She woke up to a familiar voice. Get up, Joan, said Joe. You can rest later. You need to be on the road in an hour, and I will guide you to your destination. Joan shook off her sleep, showered, dressed, packed, and loaded up the truck. Joe stopped her. Take the classic Ford car. Joan reloaded and then got into the car and headed down the road. She drove for hours, and the sun was starting to rise. Joe directed Joan off the Parks Highway, just past Willow, Alaska, headed towards Anchorage, to a road that led to one of many lake or river camping areas. There on the side of the dirt road was a car, exactly like hers, a '67 convertible, white Ford Mustang, only with red pinstriping instead of blue. Pulled up next to the car and rolled down her window. Good morning, said Joan with a cheery voice. Seems you're having a bit of trouble. Need a hand, dear? The woman stared at Joan, who looked like someone's mother. She introduced herself in a southern drawl. Well, my name's Stacy, and yes, will you help little old me? I'm afraid my tire's flat and my phone isn't working. Joan could tell this woman was about as helpless as they come, and offered to help her change her tire. The young woman opened her trunk and handed Joan the tire iron, saying, I don't know what on earth to do with this. Joan smiled. I know how to use it, dear. You do? Smiled Stacy. Yes, I'll show you, said Joan, and hit her in the head, and the woman collapsed, and Joe dumped her in the trunk of the car and shut it. She then drove the woman's car further off the dirt road, which was actually a walking path through the brush. Joan, now out of sight of the road, opened the trunk, pulled out Stacy's unconscious body, put a hook in a tree, and hung her up on it with the collar. She set the knob to only allow for a whisper. She then got the woman's laptop out of her car and fired it up. There was a multi-identification system on her computer. Joan was going to have to hack into it. But then she heard the woman sighing and realized there was an easier way to access her computer. The woman was dazed and in a whisper said, "Why'd you hit little old me? Why am I hanging in the air?" Gave her a motherly smile. "I'm so glad you're awake now. Give me your passcode." The woman said in an almost melodramatic way, "Never!" Joan took out her scalpel and drove it into the woman's leg, and she silently screamed. "The passcode," said Joan, and the woman surrendered the codes to her. Joan went to the airline's website. Joe had told her she was going to be catching a flight out today. Joan walked up to the woman and clicked the knob on the collar so she could talk, and put the voice box right next to her. And she said, "Speak," as if she was training a dog to bark on command. "What is little old me supposed to say?" said Stacy. Joan silenced Stacy to a whisper, moved the voice box, attached it to her throat, and called the airline. She had Stacy's wallet in her hand. Once her identity was confirmed, she was able to change tickets using Stacy's voice, and instead of flying to Texas, she would head further east. She checked her luggage in, she paid for the ticket with Stacy's credit card, and thanked the other person on the other end for helping little old me. Joan then weighed and measured Stacy and opened the woman's suitcase and looked at the summer dress. It was quite alluring, and put it on. This will do, she thought. She then used her machine to make an exact replica of Stacy's face. She was now exactly Stacy's look-alike. She thanked Stacy and informed her their business had concluded, and started to walk to her car. Stacy whispered, "What about little old me? Are you going to leave me here?" Joan turned around and said, "I am getting forgetful." And she walked up to Stacy, looked her in the eyes, and sliced her neck with the scalpel. She had given herself plenty of time to catch the flight, so she got to enjoy watching the woman slowly die. She whispered in the same voice as the woman's, "Oh dear, who will rescue me from this villain? Will no one save little old me?" Those were the last words Stacy ever heard. Joan got into her car, got back on the park's highway, and headed to the airport. Agent Fillmore was sitting with the women back at the police station. "What do I need to know, and who's going to tell me?" he said. Amanda spoke up. "Well, I didn't kill anyone. True, I did assault, kidnap 3 women, tortured one with my words. I almost killed one with my scalpel, but no one died." She then thought about the night she swam with Sasha. She was such a pretty woman and did not deserve to die. Only if Joan would have waited, she may still be alive. She thought about how much she tormented Dr. Scottsdale. She didn't deserve to die either. She felt the toxic shame roll over her like a dark blanket. Misty looked at Amanda and said, "Jesus forgave you, and so did I, even this latest kidnapping. I saw how beat up you were by Joan, on your last breath, and she even placed her scalpel in your hand, and you couldn't kill me, even if it would cost you your life." Agent Fillmore shook his head and looked at the women. "Let's go back to the beginning. Who can do that?" he asked. Amanda spoke. "Okay. As you know, my dad's a serial killer, and my mom Joan is also a killer, and is responsible now for 8 deaths, counting the 3 FBI agents, our 3 friends, and 2 dogs. Joan is the one you're looking for, and we have to find her before she completes the ritual." "What ritual?" asked Agent Fillmore. Amanda explained the ritual to him, and the family legacy all the way back to the fallen angel that had sex with a female human, where the blood disease started and her bloodline began, called sin. Agent Fillmore thought Amanda had bumped her head, and Megan didn't quite believe her either, but Misty and Candy did. "Okay, so let's say all this ritual stuff's true," said Agent Fillmore. "What happens if he completes it?" Amanda shared that her dad is unlike anyone else who's ever lived. He's not just a serial killer. His kind has been highly evolved with their intellect. Dad is a killing machine. Whoever receives the gift or the curse will take one more step in the evolution and be the deadliest human being that has ever lived. Moore said, "Okay, I'm tracking. According to your report, the ritual has to be a family bloodline, right? Do you have any siblings, Amanda?" "I have a twin sister named Jeannie who lives in Colorado Springs. Anyone else?" "Well, it's possible Dad spread his seed around to give him more options for the ritual." "You mean you may have more brothers and sisters?" asked Agent Fillmore. "Yes, that could be possible. Dad was always a step ahead of all of us in his planning," said Amanda. Megan shared, "We have officers on every entry and exit point out of the state. We will catch her. Unless I have a sister I don't know about in Alaska," said Amanda. "What exactly does Joe look like?" asked Agent Fillmore. "Joan is heavy set, looks motherly, has brown eyes, and a British accent," said Amanda. Agent Fillmore commented, "Sounds easy. There's not a lot of women in Alaska that fit her description." Amanda shared, "Well, it's not quite that simple. Dad was like Lon Chaney, a man of 1,000 faces. He could also change his voice to sound like anyone." "Okay," said Agent Fillmore in his matter-of-fact voice. "We're now looking for a heavy-set man or woman." Amanda couldn't quit thinking that she was missing something, but she didn't know quite what it was. Amanda spoke up. "I think we should all go to the airport. That would be the fastest way out of the state." So they all went to the Ted Stevens Airport and tried to locate Joan. Joan arrived at the parking garage at the airport as the Stacy look-alike. She had learned well from Joe to take advantage of other people's truth by making a move on the blood-splattered chessboard they didn't think was possible. She walked to the escalators and went down the tunnel that led to the terminal. She already had her bags tagged. She knew the machines would not detect anything thanks to her husband buying the luggage that gives off false images when scanned, like women's clothing and accessories, not his fun toys. She got her tickets. She was about ready to go into security when she saw Amanda. The look-alike Stacy pretended to accidentally drop her ticket. Amanda picked it up and handed it to her. The look-alike Stacy thanked her for helping little old me, and Amanda smiled. She saw the other 3 women and walked right past them. She even flirted with one of the FBI agents, who gave her his phone number. Stacy looked back, glancing curious. They all didn't die. She felt a little sad that she couldn't play with them any longer, as it was time to go through security. She went through without a hitch, boarded the plane, sat in her first-class section, and requested a glass of red wine in her cute Southern dress and Southern accent, and relaxed. She woke up to the stewardess was having the passengers prepare for landing. All 4 women and Agent Fillmore went back to the police station. They left agents and police officers there in case Joan came through. If only we could get a break, thought Candy. The next day they attended a celebration of life services for Officer Hendershot and Dr. Lindsay Stephanie Scottsdale. It was hard. The grief hit them like a freight train. Meanwhile, Officer Jimmy Wagon was on routine drive just off Parks Highway when he noticed there was something shining in the distance just off the road. He found a '67 Ford Mustang, and then noticed an unusual group of ravens flying over a tree. Stacy's body was hanging there, and was their lunch, and they picked off her flesh. Her face wasn't even recognizable. He called in that he found a body, sent the station the license plate number of the vehicle. Stacy's look-alike departed the plane and stopped for a spot of tea at the terminal in London, England. Agent Fillmore had been notified about the body in the car and was waiting for the machine from DMV to send a picture of the driver. The picture was coming through. Stacy look-alike heard Joe's voice. "They found the body. You know what to do." Stacy cleared customs, got her luggage, and went downstairs to the water closet. She went into the ladies' restroom. No one was there but a woman in one of the stalls. She put out of order sign on the bathroom door and walked up to the stall. The woman was sitting in, doing her business. She kicked the door open, knocking the defenseless woman to the floor, unconscious. She propped her up on the toilet, put one of the hooks on the door with the collar, set it on a two, and hung her on it. The Stacy look-alike sat fully clothed on the pot, observing how this woman was quite a bit smaller. But that was not a problem, as the Stacy look-alike released the valve and stepped out of her air bodysuit. Stacy look-alike pulled up the woman's knickers. "You do not want them to find little old you like this," she said. She switched clothes and then made the mask and looked just like the woman. She asked the woman her name, and she said it was Wanda. She took the voice box, attached it just under her shirt, and repeated back the Wanda in her voice. She then took out her scalpel, slit Wanda's throat, stabbed her in the chest, but it with the skill of a surgeon, and was careful not to leave blood on the floor. Wanda look-alike picked up the real Wanda's purse, jammed the door of the stall closed so no one could open it, and left her hanging on the door facing the toilet. She then jammed the outside bathroom entry door shut, picked up her luggage, and got into the waiting cab and left. Agent Fillmore and the four women were watching as the printout came. There was the picture of Stacy. "I was talking to her," said Candy, "but she was thin, not heavy set." Amanda shared. "She even helped her pick up something she dropped." "Joan was right there with them and they missed her." Agent Fillmore asked Amanda, "How's that possible? You said she was heavy set." Amanda thought. Mom had always been heavy set. And then she remembered what her dad taught her. Use what they think is the truth as their Achilles heel. Amanda just shook her head. "Dad's brilliant. Mom must have been wearing a bodysuit of some kind." "Well, we have her picture, and now so does Interpol. And the airport officials in London have said they have facial recognition. They should be able to find her," said Agent Fillmore. The Wanda look-alike asked to be dropped off at a local hotel. She checked in, paid the bill for a few nights. She went up to her room, but was only a temporary stop. She decided to return to being Aunt Joan, maybe a little thinner. She then called her daughter Tori, who was excited to hear about her inheritance. Joan called another cab and was soon knocking at her daughter Tori's flat. She was ushered inside. Tori helped her mom with her luggage and showed her to her room she would be staying in. "I would have cleaned up more, Auntie, but it's such a short notice," said Tori. "I know, dear. Now I simply must meet your friend." Frida, a young woman, came bounding in with a lot of energy and hugged Joan. "My, you're a friendly one," said Joan. "I'm even more friendly to your daughter." And Freya giggled. "Would you like to have some tea, Auntie?" "Oh, that would be lovely," said Joan. Freya commented, "We were just having lunch. Please join us." "I imagine you've had quite the adventures. Please share some with us." "There'll be time for that later, dear. You both must bring me up to date. What's been going on in your lives?" "Well, I got a respectable job at the pub, waitressing. We both work there. Tips are good. Customers are friendly. We don't have a lot, but we have each other," said Tori. "You and Freya seem to be a fun couple," observed Joan. "We are," said Freya. "She is my soul partner." "Well, as long as you're both happy, dears, that is all that matters," said Joan. Joan looked at them. "Pretend I'm not even here. I sleep very soundly, dears. Frolic the night away." Both women smiled. Tori really didn't know who her dad was very well, and Joe gave them all the good old Joe version, and how they had a whirlwind romance that brought Tori into their lives. "It had been so long since I've seen you," said Tori. "You look really good, Mom." "Thank you, dear. Been working out and lost some weight." "I have to work tonight," said Tori, "but Freya will keep you company." "That is wonderful. I'm looking forward to getting to know the love of your life." The FBI agent jet landed at the airport in London. Agent Fillmore and Candy and many other agents examined all the footage and face recognition video. The police agents in Britain tracked the Stacy look-alike until she went downstairs, and then she just disappeared. Candy asked, "Where are there no cameras?" "Well, we have none in the water closet," said the officer. Candy ran down the stairs and saw the out of order sign. She took the jam out of the door and went in. She tried the stall door. It was jammed. She slid under the door and saw Wanda hanging on the hook, bled out. Candy took her picture, showed it to the police officers, and from the video feed, there was Wanda lookalike getting in a cab. Through the cameras on the street, they followed the video feed back to a hotel, but it was empty. Tori headed off to work, and Joan asked Freya if she would like to give her a tour of the flat. "The whole flat?" giggled Freya mischievously. "Yes," said Joan, "every room." Freya giggled again, and showed all the rooms except one to Joan. She said, "This one is private. If I let you in, you must not ever tell Tori." Joan smiled. "You have no idea how I can keep a secret, dear." Freya showed Joan all her little nighties and said, "This one is your daughter's favorite." "Really?" said Joan. "I must see it on you." "Are you sure?" said Freya coldly. "I wouldn't miss it," said Joan. Freya giggled again, went into the bathroom, and came out in a black lingerie. "You look adorable," said Joan. "Well, that's enough of that," smiled Freya, and as she turned to get dressed, Joan hit her in the head with the statue she found on the table. Freya collapsed to the floor. Joan put a collar on her, placed the hook on the door, and hung her on it. Set the knob at 2.5. Whisper. When Freya came to, she stared at Joan. "You seem like such a nice lady, playful and fun." "Well," said Joan, "I am not. And if you thought I would let a slut like you touch my daughter, you are gravely mistaken. I don't ever want to hear your voice again." And she clicked the knob to silent. She left Freya hanging on the closet door in the bedroom and went into the kitchen for a spot of tea. Joan decided to have a little fun with Freya and put the scalpel to her throat and said, "Tonight, you're going to play like you've never played before, or ever will again, dear." Joan waited for Tori to come home, and she met her at the door. Joan asked her if she's still interested in her inheritance, as she got some news she actually has to leave tonight. Tori was tired from work, but thought of the money. That woke her up. "Sure, I'm interested." "Then you have to follow my instructions completely without hesitation," said Joan. Tori asked, "How much money?" "Over $1 million," said Joan. "But you do not get 1 cent unless you complete the ritual." "For $1 million, I'll do whatever you ask, whatever this ritual is," said Tori. "I know you will, dear," said Joan. "First, put on this blindfold." All Tori could think about was the money. "Okay." And Joan led her into the bedroom right next to Freya, who was hanging on the door. Joan put the scalpel in her hand and said it was a wand, and moved Tori right next to Freya, who was screaming silently for her life. With the scalpel right next to Freya's neck, Joan commanded, "Bring the wand down," and Tori did, slicing Freya's throat. "Now take off the blindfold." Tori stared at her lover with blood dripping down her neck, soaking her black negligee. Tori looked down at her bloody blade and initially was in shock. She then heard Joe's voice for the first time. Now, dear, finish the bitch. Stab her in the heart." And Tori, without a second thought, did. She stared into Freya's eyes and watched the lifeblood drain out of her. Tori heard a click in her head and turned to Joan. "Why did you have me kill the woman I love?" Joan shared, "Because it's your inheritance. You have to kill the person you care about." "Now watch her die," said Joan, "and you will be the most powerful woman who's ever lived." Women in history would beg for this moment, and now you've been given the gift to give death. Tori, just like Amanda did with Joe, had lots of questions as her brain went through the development stages of a child to a grown woman. "Do I get to kill more?" said Tori in a childlike voice. "Yes, dear, you get to kill more than your dad ever did." Freya was how old, dear? Asked Joan. 24, said Tori. "Then you can kill 24-year-old women." Do they have to like girls?" asked Tori. "Oh, heavens no, dear," said Joan. "You can sleep with whatever or whoever they want. They just need to be 24. You, however, no longer have that option. I can't have sex, asked Tori, now hitting puberty going into late adolescence. You can, dear, said Joan, but it must be a male to pass on the gift. It has to be transmitted through blood. It's so strange, said Tori. I have no desire to have sex with anyone, certainly not this pitiful-looking Freya. Yes, dear, and from now on that will be true. But you will mate. But take your time. Tori said she felt nothing for Freya, or has any feelings at all. Joan explained that means the gift is fully received. When can I kill again? Asked Tori. Soon, said Joan, but self-control is critical. If you're to be a legendary killing machine, you also must leave them clothed. Sexual arousal and death must not go together, or you'll get sloppy and be caught and hanged. Are we going to leave her here? Said Tori. No, said Joan, and then asked if she had a large trash bag. Tori pulled one out of the kitchen she got from her place she worked. She took Freya off the hook without knowing how to do so, and the metal in the collar cut her head off, and it fell in the trash bag. Don't get ahead of yourself, dear. You have to take them off the collar in a specific order, said Joan. Tori looked at Joan. It's going to take me a while to learn how to do this. It's okay, dear, said Joan. At least you caught her head in the garbage sack. Tori went to touch the body, and Joan told her to stop, and flashed a device on her fingers that left no fingerprints. Now dump her body in the sack. Joan showed her how to sterilize the scalpel, and she put it in its case. Okay, dear, let us pack up. We need to get out of here soon. Can we come back? Said Tori. No, said Joan. Home will be wherever we are. Tori and Joan threw Freya's headless body into the trunk and then drove off into the night. Where's the dump site? Said Tori. Joan smiled. Let's turn the streets of London blood red tonight. And with that, they headed to Whitechapel. Joan looked at the tourist destination where Jack the Ripper killed those women. It was late at about 12:30, and the young woman was leaving her job at the pub. Joan looked out at the foggy night. Let's play lion and lioness, said Joan. Joan was led by Joe's voice and walked behind the woman, making the clicking of her boots sound, and was dressed in black for the occasion. The woman picked up her walking and looked back, but could not see much through the fog. The woman's heart was racing. She had walked on these cobblestones for years without a care in the world, but now something menacing was behind her. She looked again and saw the outline of a black shadow moving closer to her. She was now walking faster. Her car was only 500 yards away. The shadow now seemed to be getting closer. Then she heard a woman's voice. Come over here before he gets you. The woman turned into the alley and saw Tori, and was relieved as the shadow went past the alley. Who was that? Said Tori. I have no idea, Shelley said. Well, I'll be like an older sister and protect you. Let's get you out of here. Tori asked how old she was. When she said 24, Tori's eyes lit up. She stopped and said, I think that's Shadow again. It is. Hide here. Shelley hid with Tori crouching behind her, and did not see the heavy object hit her in the head until slumped over unconscious in the alley. The shadow then joined them, which was Joan. There was a wooden beam on this building, and Shelley had the collar and put it on her and was hung on the hook. Tori waited for Shelley to come to and hid, and let Joan be the scary shadow. And as soon as she came to, Joan jumped out at her with the scalpel, and Shelley wetted herself. She was so frightened. Tori fought the shadow, and the shadow retreated. Shelley whispered, You saved me. How can I ever thank you? You can thank me, like this, said Tori, and slit her neck with the scalpel. Shelley, with blood dripping down her neck, said, I thought you were protecting me. I am protecting you, Tori, said Tori. You will not have to be frightened by the shadow any longer, because there's nothing to fear in death. Tori watched the life ebb out of Shelley's face, her tears dripping down her cheeks. She repeated the words she was hearing in her head from Joe. I've taken away everything from you. You won't ever be a wife, a mother, a grandmother. Never know passion's kiss at all. You will be a nothing person. Shelley slumped forward as she took her last breath. That night, Joan and Tori did the same thing, dumping the many women's bodies in the exact locations Jack the Ripper did. It was almost morning, said Joan. Yet Tori was not satisfied. She wanted to kill more. Self-control, said Joan, and they drove to another hotel. The next morning, the tourist tour began, and the guide saw the garbage sacks and opened one and immediately threw up. Shelley's body fell into the alley, and the crowd screamed. It was like a wildfire, the headlines of the local paper. The news was all over it. The British commissioner was yelling, "Bloody hell!" as the bodies were recovered, all on the same location as Jack the Ripper's. There were actually no clues. Forensic science was useless, and the mayor was threatening to fire everyone if the killer was not caught. Joan and Tori went back to the hotel to get some rest. It had been a long night. Adrenaline filled, to be sure, but Joan was exhausted. Tori, however, was not, and was already looking for her next victim, which just happened to be the young cleaning lady, when Joan woke up staring at the bled-out corpse swinging from the door, and Tori was looking at it. "We need another garbage bag," said Tori. Joan knew if Tori could not get that urge to kill under control, it would ruin everything. "Tori, dear, we need to talk." "When can I kill again?" said Tori. Joan just raised her eyes, and Tori heard Joe's voice. What Joe said to Tori she did not say, but she stopped asking if she could kill, and looked like a child who'd just been scolded. Tori said, "From now on, I will listen to you, Auntie. No more killing until you say." Joan thanked Joe in her mind. "We need to leave, dear. Pity you did not use that voice application." Tori touched the voice box and sounded just like the housekeeper. Joan called up room service, and another young woman arrived on command. Tori killed her like all the rest after Joan used the voice box to sound like the staff. They put on their masks and looked like the two housekeepers, went into the housekeeping room and raided the lockers, getting their IDs, purses, and then left the back way out of the hotel. Joan had paid in advance, so the bill was taken care of. They hailed a cab, headed once again to the airport, cleared customs, and got a flight to Ireland. Amanda and Officer Megan O'Reilly arrived in Colorado Springs and met the FBI agents. They went directly to Jeannie's house, but no one answered. The FBI agents got the warrant, and they searched the house. Jeannie wasn't there. They told her no one has been in and out of the house since they had gotten there. Amanda checked the garage. There was no vehicle. Hours they searched and found nothing. Amanda, however, saw something on the wall that set her back. There was a picture of her mom and 3 baby girls. She looked through the photo album and found pictures she recognized of her and Jeannie, and the name Tori was under the other photo. There were pictures of Joan with Tori in England. Amanda called Candy. "The woman you're looking for is named Tori. She is my triplet sister." The news broke about the murders in Whitechapel. Candy and Agent Fillmore and the FBI agents met with the British police. "Have you identified all the bodies?" asked Agent Fillmore. "Yes," said the sergeant. "All local girls, all 24 years of age, all with their throats slit and bled out." Candy asked about next of kin. "Well, they might have had boyfriends. Most of them worked at the pubs," said the officers. Candy and Agent Fillmore showed pictures of the women to the staff at the bars, and one of the girls named Bridget said, "Hey, that looks like Freya." "Who's Freya?" asked Candy. "Well, she lives with and was sweet with another bar waitress named Tori." "Do you know where they live?" asked Agent Fillmore, and Bridget gave them the address. Agent Fillmore and Candy went with some agents and police and entered the flat. Candy went directly into the bedroom and saw what no one else could see. She noticed the hook mark that was in the door. "We're too late," said Candy. "The ritual has been completed." Candy was now sure that all the women killed at Whitechapel Tori had murdered. Candy called Amanda. "The ritual was completed by your sister Tori." They called the picture of Tori to the local police, and soon footage of her and Joan were clearly seen and traced them into the hotel. They found the service staff hanging on the doors in their rooms. Agent Fillmore took the pictures. There was no facial recognition from the streets of London. "We're out of leads," said Candy. "What can we do now, Agent Fillmore?" "We wait until they are seen by the cameras, or she kills again and the bodies are found." A week went by, no more killings in England, yet 8 women 24 years of age were found in a part of Ireland notorious for women going missing. At each last known location, Tori left a dead woman in a garbage bag. Candy and Agent Fillmore flew to Ireland. It was the same pattern. "Tori's really stacking up the bodies," said Candy. Tori and Joan had once again changed identities, were on a plane headed to the United States, specifically to Stapleton Airport in Denver, Colorado. Candy called Amanda and said, "Sit tight, we'll be landing in the Springs tomorrow." And all the women with Agent Fillmore and the other police officers and FBI agents made Jeannie's house their base camp as they planned their operation. "Do you really think Joan and Tori are coming to Colorado?" asked Agent Fillmore. "I'm sure of it." Misty and Amanda agreed. For some reason, she needs to find Jeannie. "Do you think she's going to kill her?" asked Megan. "I don't know," said Candy. "We're missing something," said Amanda. "It's right in front of us, and we don't see it." Joan called Jeannie from the hotel. They had arrived after a long flight. "Are you going to take me out of here?" asked Jeannie. "No, not yet, dear," said Joan. "But by the way, when are visiting hours?" Join me for the next terrifying conclusion as Wonderful Counselor podcast miniseries Hide and Seeks comes to its terrifying ending in the titled episode Heaven and Hell.